This morning in the Derek Chauvin trial in the George Floyd case, we heard from the chief of the Minneapolis Police Department. He's the man who fired Officer Chauvin after Floyd's death last May. Christiane Cordero joins us live with an update. Christiane.
Well, Shaylo, there was a lot of anticipation into the chief's testimony, and if time is any indicator, then it is certainly living up to it. He has spoken for an hour and 15 minutes, and I guess we can say that he has talked about the case without directly talking about the case. We know that, of course, going into the extent of his history with MPD, his 30-plus-year career with the department, and the importance of following the policies, of understanding them as he has written some of them himself. Important to note that policy and criminal law are two separate things, but nonetheless, the prosecutors were questioning him about the importance of following these MPD policies. Here's what he had to say.
The badge that I wear and that members of the Minneapolis Police Department wear, it means a lot because the first time that we interact with our community members may be the only time that they have an interaction, and so that has to count for something. And so it's very important for us to make sure that we're meeting our community in that space, treating them with dignity, being their guardians, and representing and all of the men and women that came before us who served so proudly on this department.
We expect at some point he will talk about what happened last Memorial Day very specifically, or at the very least that prosecutors will ask him those pointed questions, and also, of course, that the defense will have their opportunity to cross-examine him. Now, the other person who we heard from this morning was the doctor who George Floyd was in the hands of when he arrived at HCMC. He was the doctor who ultimately pronounced him dead at around 9 p.m. on May 25th. And the big question that everybody had for him was, based off of his impression, how did George Floyd die? Here's what he had to say.
And doctor, was your leading theory then for the cause of Mr. Floyd's cardiac arrest oxygen deficiency?
That was one of the more likely possibilities. I felt that at the time, based on the information I had, it was more likely than the other possibilities.
And doctor, is there another name for death by oxygen deficiency?
Asphyxia is a commonly understood term.
Thank you, Dr. Langenfeld.
You were discussing hypoxia kind of being consistent with asphyxiation, right?
Correct.
Hypoxia is the lack of oxygen to the brain, correct?
Correct.
And there are many things that cause hypoxia that would still be considered asphyxiation. Agreed?
Correct.
Drug use. Certain drugs can cause hypoxia. Agreed?
Yes.
Specifically fentanyl?
That's correct.
How about methamphetamine?
It can.
Combination of the two?
Yes.
That really leans into Eric Nelson's point, that he's trying to make of George Floyd's cause of death being a drug overdose. The defense, of course, has not brought in any of their expert witnesses, and so we'll have to wait and see how this evolves and the kind of impression, of course, that it has on the jury. As for today, Shayla, the big anticipation continues to be Chief Arradondo taking the stand. We expect that he'll talk about the case. We expect that he'll get cross-examined quite heavily from the defense.
All right, Christiane Cordero reporting. Of course, we know that testimony is expected to resume this afternoon. The jury is on a lunch break at this time, but of course, you can follow the continuing coverage of the Derek Chauvin trial with us right here on WCCO on television as well as on CBSN Minnesota.